It's just a conversation with a fellow clown. It's not very serious, we're clowning around. It's really just a clown-versation. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Clown-versation. So good to see you. And today we have the amazing Dean Evans. He's going to be here, Honeybuns himself. Mr. Dean Evans is going to be in the studio in just a couple of minutes. How are you, everybody? I'm so glad that you joined me today for Clown-versations. I am Barnaby King, founder of Clown Spirit, where we take the power of clowning and we use it to bring joy, lightness, and connection to your life and the lives of everybody around you. And our mission is to unleash as many clowns into the world as possible. And I think that we need it right now. The clowns are the leaders of the revolution, everybody. It's our responsibility. And also, before Dean comes on, I want to just tell you the great news that he's going to be leading a masterclass on August the 9th. It's going to be on Clown and the Cosmic Quest. And the month before that, we have the also amazing Eric Davis leading a masterclass on Buffon Pleasure to Mock. So we have such exciting things coming up at Clown Spirit Village. If you want to check it out and find out how you can sign up, how you can join Clown Spirit Village, go to clown-spirit.com/village and all will be revealed. All right, folks. So Dean Evans was an institution of the Chicago clown scene when I was living in Chicago. So we actually got to perform together on the same stage, which was super cool. He's now living in LA. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him before we get started, before I bring him on. He is an award-winning performer, director, and master of physical theater, known for his bold, genre-defying work, named one of New York City Magazine's top 50 players. He's performed internationally as a solo artist with companies like Cirque du Soleil, Second City, IO, and the Goodman in Chicago. A longtime ensemble member of the amazing Neo-Futurists, Dean helped to create groundbreaking original work and made their Off-Broadway directorial debut in 2019 with Mil Grus. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. They are the artistic director of the Nonsemble in Los Angeles and creator of the whimsical alter ego Honeybuns, amazing Buffon character, which has performed or who has performed in New York City, Moscow, Ireland, and beyond. I don't know where is beyond New York City, Moscow, and Ireland. I mean, that's just everywhere, right? Maybe the moon. We'll find out in just a moment. Also, Dean has devised over a dozen full-length productions, 3 circuses, countless comedic characters, and their work has been seen on NBC, something that I can't pronounce that's Russian, the Onion Network, and in award-winning digital films. They also host a month-long ham festival at the Elysian Theater in LA. And he's one of the teachers this summer at the Celebration Barn, and I think he's done stuff there before. So he is a clown to be reckoned with and much sought after. So please welcome to the stage, Mr. Dean Evans.
I feel like doing that no one does this gesture anymore. I feel like doing that after that.
Yes, let's do it. I don't know what it means.
It's like, hurrah, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe something
but it's almost like a little bit like self-flagellation. If I had like
oh, okay, maybe that's where it comes from. Yeah.
I'm like beating myself while you applaud me. Dean, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
No sweat. Pleasure.
Are you in LA right now?
I'm in Los Angeles at the moment. There's a tiny little bit of a heat wave, so it's a little warm, but I'm comfortable with my ceiling fan and my ice water.
Very good. Yeah. You've lived there because it was Chicago where we met, and that was around, I was trying to figure this out, but I think it was around 15 years ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. We met Chi-Town Clown Review Yeah, which probably would have been, oh, when was that? What year is it now? 2025? And I've been in LA for 9 years, and then I was in Chicago for like 15 years. So it's probably been at least 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have one foot in the grave, but we're still kicking.
Well, yeah, we're definitely kicking. And what's kicking with you? What's like big on your agenda right now?
Good question. Well, heading into summer, got some workshops and gigs coming up. I'm working on a new solo show, so I'm trying to get some stage time in all the grassroots clown shows in LA and developing some new material, going to the barn this summer, teaching a workshop, taking a workshop. Gonna do my new solo show in San Francisco in August, and then my Honeybuns in Portland in September.
Oh, wow. No way. You're going to be in Portland.
I'm going to be in Portland.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, for the festival? For the,
yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's incredible. Oh, my gosh. Well, I will totally come and see you, of course.
Of course. So there'll at least be one person. Yes.
Well, I have a friend.
Oh, dude, double. Okay, yeah. Good. I'm excited then. No, I've actually never been to Portland. I was trying to find an excuse to go, and I can't afford to travel, so I just try to do gigs. Because then it's the funnest, because then you get to travel and then just hang out with all the artists wherever you go anyways, which is fun. So that's how I travel places.
Yeah. I mean, that is really the joy of being a performer, right? Is just hanging out with all the other performers.
It is. Like if you're in show and you're doing some cool kooky clown show, you know, all the weirdos come out and like to talk to you, and you talk to them, and here's this restaurant, and look at my apartment, and it's fun. That's the best way to see a city, I feel like, is hang out with the artists.
Yeah. Hey, can I hang out with you and the artist when?
Of course.
Cool. Well, that's really exciting, because I think I saw Honeybuns once in a small format, like maybe in Chi-Town Clown Review.
Gotcha. That's where I developed that character. It might have been the first time I ever did it.
Yeah,
for sure.
I haven't seen a full-length show.
Yeah, there's been, every time I do the full-length show, it's a little different. Although the first sort of chunk of it, the on-ramp of the show is some, but the show is ever evolving, and I'm still doing it. I love doing it. I just did a gig last weekend. It had been a while, and I was like, I feel like doing Honeybuns. So I did it. The hat, can't really see, it's on this right there, the hat. But yeah, I have fun doing it.
What's the difference for you, like in terms of your preparation and kind of getting into that character versus doing? I mean, is your other show is clown show?
It's true, yeah. Well, the costume, at this point, it doesn't take me too long to get into it, but that's become a ritual in and of itself. I've always had terrible stage fright, always still do, probably always will. But the ritual of getting into the costume, and I wear makeup and I'm not a big fan of having things on my face. So sometimes I get crabby about putting makeup on, even though that's just the occupational hazard of being a clown. But yeah, there you go. But the putting on the costume is a bit of a ritual, and then Honeybuns, is, or at least started as a bouffant character, and I really like the flavor of persuasion, and so it's not hard for me to get into that zone, because it's really fun for me to be persuasive, and I think at heart I'm a satirist, so I really like to provoke and be provocative, and so that puts me in a fun space pretty quickly. So it's not hard for me to get in, and also I've done that character a lot, and so there's a flavor to it that's familiar for me and that I like.
Is there a lot of improv in that show? I mean, how scripted is it versus?
Good question. So I always have an outline. There is a lot of improv by way of like crowd work. It's very audience interactive. Sometimes I'll just straight up go out there. Some of my best shows have been fully improvised, but for the most part, I have an outline, especially if I'm performing like in a theater for a gig, like on tour. I try to put on a show that has,
Yeah.
you never know with improvisation, but yeah, I always say the best show I ever had. There was one time I had a stage manager. It was in Chicago at Collaboration. I was doing a fairly long run of the show, and I had a new stage manager who had never run tech. And I was like, before the show starts, let's just set a level for the sound while I'm putting on makeup. And they're like, sure, sure, sure. And so I'm backstage, I'm putting on makeup, half done makeup, not really on costume. And I hear my music. I'm like, oh, right, sound check. So I walked into the stage. I have very bad night vision. I walked into the stage and I was like, kind of thumbs up on the volume. I was like, got it. And then the lights came on and the whole audience was there. And it was their first day. They never told me house is opening and never told me we're going. And I was just like, oh. But I just was caught off guard, and I just thought, oh, well, here I am. And it ended up improvised. The whole show ended up being one of my favorite shows. It was not a big audience either. I don't know how many. There's maybe like 16, 18 people there. So it was really intimate and fun, and it was probably my favorite show to this day. Don't remember a lot of what I did, but I literally just sat on the edge of the stage and started chatting and, did a show.
That's very cool. I just want to invite folks at home to jump into the chat if you're watching, and say hi. Let us know what you're doing, where you are, and what your own experience is,
what you're drinking,
what you're eating, what you're thinking, and where you're about to go next in your life. And if you have any questions for Dean, pop those into the chat too. And Dean will decide if he wants to answer them or not.
I would love to get a question that I refuse to answer.
Yeah. Well, you can see all the questions there, so you can choose. You can say, no, I don't want to answer that one. I want to answer that one.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. When they start flooding in just a moment.
For sure.
So you were mentioning to me before we came on air that you feel like you've just about arrived in LA, but you've been there 9 years. So what was that journey like, sort of arriving and trying to get in on the scene?
Well, LA, as they say, is on hard mode. Things are expensive. It's competitive to get jobs and survive, and in that way, if you're, your standard sort of transplant. So it's been tough in that way. I mean, the first couple years here, just struggling to keep my head above water. But in terms of clowning, I'm pretty constant. I think the first 2 years I was here, I think I just worked constantly just to barely make rent. But I was so excited to be here because at the time, it was just like 2017, the Idiot workshop was going on with John Gilkey was teaching, and I was so excited to get into that because I had always wanted to do, kind of like clown improv-y, more loose, that kind of style was interesting. And they had just done the show in Chicago, the Simple Simples, which I loved. And so I got into things right away, and I'm just a lifer clown. If I'm anywhere, I'm like, let's get the scene going. So I jumped into classes and got involved with the community right away and started performing any chance I could. But the rest of LA was tough. It's been tough the whole time. And then LA's had a tough go because, it burns, and then there's strikes, and then riots and things like that. And it's a very fast-moving, reactive town, but the community itself has been so supportive of me, and it's fun to have an audience. There's a young audience, which is really fun for me, and there's a good market for classes and things like that. So, although LA as a whole has its challenges, it's been rewarding. I mean, I will be forever grateful to my grave to have been a part of the sort of LA pandemic clown explosion. Was and is a joy. So, but of course, every month by the skin of my teeth paying rent. That's the struggle of many artists, especially ones that live amongst expensive real estate.
Yeah. Expensive real estate that's going to burn any moment.
It's true.
So yeah, I mean, you're really living the artist life, that sort of month to month existence.
For sure. It's been brutal on my nervous system, but it has its rewards.
Yeah. And clowning and performing is brutal on your nervous system, apparently.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's, throughout my entire career performing, it's been tumultuous in terms of my relationship with being on stage, because obviously, I'm very shy, fairly introverted, but I obviously have an unrelenting need to be seen and to put myself into the scariest situations possible. But, it is hard on your nervous systems and oftentimes unsustainable if you're not taking care of yourself. And I've had huge chunks of time, especially when I first started having some successes, especially around solo performing, which, as is 10 times as stressful as even duo. So, it's been a journey of learning how to take care of myself. What do I need? And examining after each show, like, is this sustainable? And if not, then what do we need to change? And so, yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. So what are the examples of things that you do to help you with well-being, looking after yourself? Have you found specific things that help?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could go through a checklist in terms of like day of show, but the biggest thing for me is to be well rested and comfortable, and to not have too many unexpected sensations, meaning wear comfortable clothes. I have like sensory things. I can get like very sensitive about my skin and my environment. I don't know, it's always been like that. So I have to make sure to be comfortable, to make sure to be prepared. And I mean that, and if it's something that's rehearsed, be rehearsed, or if it's more loose and improvisational, to be in that play space and to give myself prep time. Even if I just have a short set, I try to give myself a big chunk of the day, if possible, to take care of myself and be fed and hydrated and also to start warming up socially on the way to the gig, because I tend to be so introverted that if it takes me a while to get warm up, so I make eye contact with people I see on the street and start to allow the flower to blossom. I kind of have two modes. I'm introverted and by myself and alone 99% of the time, and then a sliver of time I'm absolutely running the room and not a lot of in between. So I got to make sure I like fire up the warp drive. It's like being in like spaceship. You don't just go boo. You have to be like, okay, systems check, oxygen levels, here we go. And there's a kind of engineering part of me, a kind of almost like a craftsperson that enjoys that process. And again, that the ritual, in a place of chaos, meaning doing a clown set at some weird underground LA show in post-pandemic America, there's a lot of chaos. So anything that you can find that's ritual and routine, cling to and enjoy deeply.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I really resonate with a lot of that, Dean. That feeling of like, oh, I'm highly insular, most of the time and most of the day, and then there's this like switching it on moment where suddenly, yeah, like you say, you're kind of like you're ruling the room, like you're controlling the room. And once I'm in that space, it feels wonderful and really automatic. But there's a kind of a gear shift required that can be, and both ways, like coming off of that is tricky. as well. Like there's a kind of residual euphoria and social neediness.
Yeah, and there's a hangover or withdrawal. I think you have to be just as conscientious about that as to the buildup too, because you can get what's the right word? I was gonna say sort of inflated, you know, and it's tempting to want to stay there until you collapse. But you really do have to take steps after a show or even teaching to get grounded and be conservative with your energy if you want to be sustainable. I mean, you know, sometimes you can do a full out blowout if, you know, you're in New York for the weekend and you got one more show and it's time to go nuts. And, you know, some people need that too, but you do have to take care of yourself just as much after the show as before.
Yeah. I'd love to know about your new show. Do you have any sort of summary or themes, or what is going on with the new show? And you're testing out material, and it's gonna launch premiere pretty soon.
Yeah. Good question. You know, I applied for a thing recently with the show that I did not get, but through the application process of just, you know, how for things like that, you have to write about projects that are so far from being done. I do everything at the last minute. So I was writing about what is the show, and it's more probably the closest just to me. I don't have a title. You have a few titles that are out there, and the one that I've been being playfully pretentious with lately is just to call it Dean Evans: My Finest Work. And I'm being, you know, kind of intentionally egomaniacal there, because that's a fun space for me. Like I always say Honeybuns: World's Greatest Mime, which of course isn't true, but I like that. You know, that's fun for me to be sort of bombastic in that way. But then I had another one. I was going to call it oh God, it was a big long sentence. I forget. It was like, bring me the head of your daintiest clown so that I something, I forget. And then, and then there was a while I was thinking of just calling it Clown, but spelled with a Q, Qlown. I don't know. We'll see where it ends up, but it is, it's, I sort of come out as the closest thing to me that I've done. I tend to do characters and things that have, you know, severe affectation, but this one I kind of come out as me, or some version of me, and I start doing what I call in the show impersonations, but they're not you know, celebrity impersonations. I start doing these sort of little tiny mini vignettes. You know, initially I did a character that came out and I was like, oh, hello, I'm Hollywood, California's third top grossing creature actor and motion capture artist, which isn't true. But I set myself up as kind of a pretentious movement artist. And then I start doing these little things. And now that was fun for me, but I stripped the premise because it wasn't really necessary. So now I just come out as me and I start doing these things, but it's been fun because I found, even though I might do like a bunch of short ones in a row, I can kind of put anything in there because I've sort of have this premise that I'm going to deliver you these things, and I might set them up or I might not set them up, and I can play to or against your expectation. And the themes that come up, you know, or are around like gender, you know, I'm queer identifying, and so a lot of stuff like using these sort of little clowny mimetic vignettes to explore gender identity. You know, my work tends to be, I don't know what the right word is. I was going to say PG-13, but I might say NC-17. I wouldn't really. Well, sometimes kids with cool theater parents come to my shows all the time. They don't care.
Yeah.
But my work tends to be kind of like pervy, sexual, dark, a lot of dark humor. So there's a lot of stuff like that. I'm just testing. After this, there's a clown open mic. And I'm going to test some new ones. I have a new one called A Suspicious Flautist. And then I have one. Oh, it's just a little mind piece about an alien abduction, but the tension is not so much in the pieces themselves are silly, but there's tension between me and the work I'm portraying and the artist, and so I'm kind of triangulating and doing some crowd work. But again, it's pretty loose right now, but I've been having a lot of fun doing it. And I wanted to intentionally come up with some material that would have a lot of versatility in terms of what type of venue. I could do a stand-up venue. It's the first show where I just use a mic. I don't have to use a mic, but I have a lot of fun with the mic and the cord and being a physical artist with that. So I can do it in a stand-up show. It's not my favorite to do stand-up shows, but I like having that versatility and is really fun. Especially, I love Honeybuns. Like I said, it's really fun for me, but it's a whole suitcase. And at least 30 minutes at least to get ready. And you want to have a dressing room and privacy and have a surprise. And I have an opening sound cue usually. So not that I haven't done Honeybuns in those situations, I have, but it's nice to just show up and put a funny hat on.
Whew. Yeah, so this sounds like this show is very light. You could just kind of show up.
Very light. I can just show up. It relies a lot on me physically.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not that it's a big exertion, but there's a lot of finesse to it because I'm doing a sort of a lot of, you know, sort of mime, gentle, sort of playful mime. And I have noticed that the ritual for this show is different than Honeybuns. Honeybuns, I like to get really worked up and charged up. And even though I contain it in the beginning of the show, I like to be a lot of energy coming through a focused hole. This one, I really have to work against my stage fright, get my nervous system very, very calm, very, very playful, in sort of, you know, a light way. And it takes deep breathing and a lot of, you know, sort of staying grounded, like mentally before the show, not getting too worked up and just being, it's back to that. I always think of that Honeyman show where I was like, oh no, the lights came up and I'm half in costume. Of just going, the phrase that I think of is, oh, I just got to talk to these people. There's that means to me, because my, you know, I live on that urge, but that verge of panic, I have to have a kind of key phrase that's reminding me of that flavor. You just got to talk to these people. And so I get to that space and I need to practice that. That's why I do the mics. And a lot of times I don't. I'm nervous and in my head and, you know, and I bomb all the time.
Wow, that's good to know.
I bomb all the time. Ask any of these LA clowns, they've seen me. But sometimes people come, oh, this person teaches. I want to come see perform, and they come and I just eat crap face first.
Expectations.
Yeah, well, they won't be signing up anytime soon. That's how it is.
Well, it's great though that you're doing that, but I feel that that's maybe sort of par for the course in the LA clown scene in general. Like it sounds like a lot of these experimental things that Gilkey and Chad and people are doing are probably failing a lot of the time. You know, they're not always great. Like improv shows, you know, you can catch a really good one and you can catch really dull ones.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like improv. If you just threw a dart at a listing of improv shows, there's an 85% chance it's going to blow. And I say that as a long-time Chicago improviser. You know, I was on a Herald team at I.O. for years, and I totally, that's just true. And that's the same with that sort of what I call like grassroots show. It's like we need a space to throw things out there, and it is true with it. But then there's some times where the right variables will happen and there's an electricity that you wouldn't get otherwise. You know, I went to you know, I went to Oscar Fuentes back alley show. Does a show and it's in a back alley, literally covered with poop. It smelled so bad, and you're like, what the heck is going on here? And for the first, you know, hour of the show, it was electric. There's 80 people standing in the most horrifying, dangerous place to be. Wow. And it's just like a sideshow. You know, there's just a vibe there that you wouldn't get if you weren't taking big swings. So I appreciate the community here, that there's there's an audience for that. There's people that do that, and that's what we have to do.
Yeah, it's really cool. There's a question here. I'm sorry that we've been ignoring you, Eli, but I think it's a good one. I'm going to put it up on the screen here, and then you can refuse to answer it if you want.
Yeah.
Eli says, "There's no classes near me. What's a good way for me to teach myself bouffant?"
That's a good question. I love bouffant. I consider myself a bouffant. There's a lot of people that have interest in clowning and more, I don't know what you call it, the esoteric arts, that don't live in near, like a major arts market that has a critical mass that can maybe sustain like ongoing bouffant classes.
Right.
And the way to do it is like stuff that you're doing, like with Clown Spirit, is start to get involved with things on. There are like texts, like there's of course the infamous Tormentor by Philippe Gallier, which was taken from the shelves, but of course everybody has an illegal PDF copy of. I can't say that. I mean, I love Philippe Gallier. He's one of my teachers, and he's beautiful. I can't say out of the blue reading that book is gonna, help me to immediately go on stage and do things. But it's not a book of straightforward tools. Let's just say that. But there, it's funny. I've actually found that bouffant, this is opening up a can of worms, is more prevalent in concept in mass media than clowning even. And I think that both of them are much more prevalent than people think. A lot of times people think clown, is this thing that's way out there. And I actually think it's just everywhere. But I guess I'm biased, I'm a clown. But bouffant even more so because of its satirical element. So, I don't know of any like books right off the bat, but once you start to sort of see and understand what it is, you can start to pick it out of mass media, meaning movies, television, the internet, and go, that's bouffant. So I know that's not a very straightforward way of answering that question.
So it's interesting, those, but I guess what you're saying is that you could learn by observing.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, it's a hard, a class just expedites things. I feel like that's the goal of the class. There's not really a way to teach someone how to be a clown, but you facilitate them discovering that they are already a clown. And that's the process of teaching, the arts in general. It's like this sort of facilitation. And so a class will expedite things, but not required. Some people, if you have the ability, you travel and you do immersions and you travel and take classes. That's traditionally how it's been for a long time. That's how I learned to do things. And it is the hardest thing in the world, like to go for a regular person to just go and take a week off work and spend money and do whatever. But and you probably relate to this too. Now in LA, there's like 10 ongoing concurrent classes in every subject of clowning. But back in the day, we had one clown class a year in town. But most of the time, you're saving up for like 4 years. I remember I wanted to go to the Celebration Barn and do Avner's workshop, and I just couldn't afford it. But I was like, I'm going to start saving, and I couldn't afford it. And then finally I could, but then I couldn't go because I couldn't get off work. And then finally 4 years later, I finally got to go for 2 weeks. And that's sort of how it is. It's a long game, So you start Googling it, and then you get some weird books off of eBay, and then you start getting on mailing lists. You take some online stuff like the Eric Davis's class coming up soon. I mean, geez, what a opportunity for people that don't live in those markets, which is a lot. I've been teaching online. I teach online.
Yeah.
Teaching a class right now called Clown on Camera. I've been teaching mime online for a long time.
Yeah, I'm really curious about your online teaching. How's that going with the teaching mime, teaching on camera, clown for the camera? I guess that makes sense in online because you're already on camera, so you've got that frame and context that you're playing within, and mime feels doable because it's so much about mimesis and just seeing something and copying it. But
Yeah. No, I
are
mean,
there limits? Are there limits? Like what doesn't work so well online?
Yeah.
You do everything online.
There are limits for sure. Like you're exactly right. Mime tend to have a little bit of an edge for online classes because it's visual, and I can show you and I can watch you do it and give notes, and it's taught, the pedagogy of mime, it's taught through technique. There's a right way to do it,
Yeah.
and so that on that level, it initiates that conversation well. It does have limitations because mime, although it is taught through technique and it has that tradition, it still is a performing art. It still benefits from the sort of, deeper empathy of face to face. It requires all that. You get a little bit of that online, but there's a lag, as you know, and it's just not quite the same. It probably never will be, or who knows? I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't speculate about technology, but so there is a limitation to it, but it is a great on ramp, and I have seen people over the years become mimes because it's like the Buffon conversation. They start taking mime, they get an understanding of what the art form means, and it gives them the tools to start seeing it and using it in their life and learning in that way, which is really how you learn anything. And then clown on camera too. I live in LA. I like to do, I'm a filmmaker myself. I love visual storytelling, and I do gigs as a performer. Very rarely, am I dressed like a clown, but to be a clown, filmmaker who's attempting to use the lens to create that collective feeling of awe or empathy that we enjoy in clown, it requires some knowledge. And again, the clown on camera class I've been loving. I taught it during the pandemic and I love teaching it. And then after years, I was like, I want to do that again because I've been doing more on film stuff. And it's been really fun because you can convey the technical stuff. You can screen things online as well as you can screen in person. You can show things and break down what's working about this. Why does this pratfall work on the screen? And you can be technical. And there is some getting used to. Let's do some classic clown exercises like entrances or whatever with the camera, because the camera in our minds holds a certain energy and mythology and makes us freak out a little. So to learn that process is important. So it works in that way. But of course, ensemble stuff is really hard. Partnering is not the same. You can do things, I certainly have, but when you're really in a flow with a group of people, if you were to break it down into milliseconds, how fast it would be, really tiny, and there's a lot of harmony that you don't get.
Yeah, for sure. Emily has a great question here. Does there exist a repository for online resources like this? Yes, Emily. There does exist a repository, and it's called Clown Spirit Village. And we have growing piles and mountains of online resources for you, all about clowning and Buffon and all these things, including now over 30 masterclasses with amazing teachers like Dean and Eric and so many more. And when you join the Clown Spirit Village, you actually can access all those masterclasses, as well as attending the monthly ones that come up. And I have courses on there that I've created as well, and we have live coaching. So there's a ton of stuff there. And I don't know, Dean, of any other online clown world.
I don't know about a repository. There's a mime or two that have tried to do that with mime, that I'm not super aware of. All the clown like teachers and stuff have things like mailing lists, and like, for example, I have like a Patreon, and I post what I call clown secrets, me musing about clown, and I do list other things. I just listed a bunch of links. A lot of people ask me like, where can I see such and so? Where can I see clown solving a problem? Where can I see this working in cinema? And so I post stuff like that on there, but it is not a repository by any means. But I think Clown Spirit Village, that's what it's called, right? Clown Spirit Village.
Yeah.
that's like stuff like that is great. I wish I would have had that back in the day. I remember there was a clown in New York who did, remember Clown Summit, Christopher Lewis?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I mean, it was like, I even bought it. I was like, I'll pay $10.
Me too.
Like
I totally love that. He'd interviewed Bill Irwin and lots of
like Avner and maybe even Jeff Hoyle or somebody.
Yeah,
he got in there, and John Gilkey, and I listened to those. I mean, I'm a clown nerd, of course, but you know.
Dean, so people can access your this online material that you're talking about by joining your mailing list. Is that how they?
Yeah, if you go to my website, which is dean.la, I think if there's not a link to the Patreon there, you can sign up for my email list. And I don't send a lot of them out, but I plug classes I'm teaching and shows, and just give people the general what's up. And then as a part of that, I try to lure people into my Patreon. On my Patreon, I have like all of my videos archived and all, and I write. So sometimes it's a lot of musings about clown or mime or how to do things, and then sometimes I just write stories. Yeah. So yeah.
I've just put that website up there on the screen so folks can see that it's not clickable, but it's pretty easy to type into your browser there and get to Dean's website and sign up for his.
DeanEvans.net or just Dean.la takes you to the same place.
Okay, cool. So it's very awesome that you've kind of gone full circle with wanting to go and study with Avner, and now you're teaching at Celebration Barn.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely, as a clown nerd, but then specifically also a mime artist and a theater artist, that it was not lost on me when I first taught there. It's because the barn was founded by a mime, Tony Montanaro, who I was well aware of course. I was utterly obsessed with mime when I first was learning it. And so to go back there and be the resident mime teacher, and it's interesting. I'm not a big like superstitious ghost supernatural person. I never have been. I'm very skeptical, but there have been some things there. But when I showed up, because when you're the teacher, you're staying in his house, you're staying in the farmhouse, and it's been there a long time. It's got vibes, and I'll tell you, I just walked in there, and it's, especially going from LA to a barn in rural Maine that's hundreds of years old. I literally just was like, hey, Tony, how's it going? I'm teaching this week. Let's just be cool. and I do, it's been cool, but it's been interesting. I'm like, well, I'm not to say there's ghosts, but there's some doors blow open and things when certain names get mentioned, and it's very interesting.
Oh, cool. Did he ever teach you? Did you know?
No, he passed away probably, I forget what year he passed away, 2004 or something maybe. But I, at that time, was just learning mime, and I didn't have the opportunity to study with him.
Where did you learn, Dean?
Initially, I went to the School for Mime Theater, which was in Gambier, Ohio, and it was a summer immersion. At the time, it had been around for about 35 years at the time. And I was going to school for theater. I hadn't studied theater then, but I took a mime class in college from an amazing teacher named Janine Thompson, who was a dancer, mime theater person. Most beautiful mime. Her movement, I mean, it was amazing. She's a dancer. She was like, you should check out this school. I went to that school during the summer, and it was kind of back like there was a long time, there was like a heyday of immersions, probably starting in the 60s, and around then things were getting shorter. I mean, the pendulum swing of classes, like the barn, for example, they would go there all summer and train. School for Mime Theater, they'd be there for at least 10 weeks doing immersion the whole time. Different economy, different world. And then at that time, things were still a little longer, but shrinking. So the first year I went was 5 weeks. A 3-week immersion, and then 1 week immersion with Nick Johnson, and then 1 week immersion with Stefan Nijikovsky from Poland. And I went to that school every year for, I think, 5 years straight, and then took 2 years off, and then came back a couple more times. Like, I was obsessed. But as a part of their training, during that, one of the teachers was Dan Griffiths, who I believe has been on the show.
Oh yeah.
He taught a clown class, and the first year I went to mime school, they had like a little festival, and they so I took this one clown class and was immediately blown away. And then there were some amazing clowns that were students there at the time that were inspiring. But then also I saw Kaput Clown Theater, and it just was, it's like being hypnotized. It was the exact right thing, and I was impressionable, and I was like, I want to do that. And then later I was in Kaput, and it was
Oh, cool.
it was a great learning experience. Yeah, so I went to the school, and then from there, was obsessed with mime. I studied with Marceau briefly in college, and then Marceau, and then took every workshop, everything I could. Was obsessed with physical theater. Moved to Chicago, studied with 500 Clown, and went to the Barn and Philippe Gallier, and would do anybody that come to town, City Company, if anybody, Viewpoints, Suzuki, loved that, Meisner, improv. I was obsessed with classes. I just did everything.
This is a really great kind of like lesson for people who were just starting out, like that avid, just like, I need as much as possible, just to kind of like.
Oh yeah, you gotta do it, because clown is clown. Clown isn't even a thing. It's just the thing between all things. So the more things you learn, the more, it's like, well, you're gonna go on stage. Yes, of course you're gonna clown. You might be a clown all the time, but you still gotta do something.
Yeah, I mean, the clown has to have that thing, and for me, it was always music really that did that, like piano.
Oh, for sure. I mean, gosh, clown and music is, the musical numero. That's probably the oldest, that mime, and then improv acting, being a goof, circus skills, literally anything,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dancing is a nice one.
Well, of course. Dancing and clown. I'm reading, what's his name's book on history of clown, John Turner. You had him on, right? John Turner?
John Townsend,
sorry. Yeah, I'm reading his book, and essentially the history of clown, and clown's been a constant, but the history of just like what medium is popular. Oh, and then they sang. It was popular to have a singing clown for 100 years. And and then they went back to music and then acrobats, and then the medium shifted from this to this. And so now they do this that's appropriate for them.
And the whole thing of talking, whether the clowns talk or not, is kind of, I think, to do with the fashion of the times and like what else is going on, and who is talking, telling jokes is a thing, and being witty, verbally witty, and clowns sort of latch onto that and do that, and so they almost look like stand-ups sometimes. And
they even have those books, the books of clown jokes for clowns, right? And then here's what they say and here's what you do, and
who are your favorite comedians right now who you would say really are clowns, or are clowns?
Really, like our secret clowns? God, that's such a good question. Who do I really like that's like a secret clown? I'm trying to think. Like, Robin
Williams was.
For sure. Yeah, Robin Williams. I definitely like. To get with the story of like, there's different mediums. To me, like, I recently went through a phase where I watched every Tig Notaro special, and in terms of the storytelling and a rock solid relationship with the audience, that's just very connected and really precise storytelling. I don't know, maybe Tig is a secret clown. I don't know. Who else do I like that's doing funny stuff in mainstream? I love Tim Robinson, of course. It'd be interesting to think of him from a clown context. I'm trying to think of like, what is that couple that makes feature films? They made one, was it Lost in Paris, and then that other one, The Fairy. They're like Belgian clowns, right?
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
I love them because they make feature films, but they are clowns, and they use a lot of clowns in the casts of their films, and you can tell. I absolutely adore them. Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking the other day, I was like, oh, that person's a clown, but I can't really remember who it was. Yeah, I don't know. It escapes me, but as they come up, I'll certainly shout them out.
I just was reflecting and coming back to this question of how Eli's question about how to become a bouffon without teaching, and I mean, or without attending a workshop or something. And maybe, and I think it's related to this question of like, who are the clowns out there? Find out, look around, start looking around, like where are the bouffon characters that you're seeing, either in real life or in the media or in the movies, and notice what they're doing. And I guess in particular, versus the clown, the bouffon is the one who is leaning into the satire, into the grotesque, into the edgy, like sort of makes you feel uncomfortable comedy. Kind of going into the what's the word, the taboo, the thing that kind of is not said in the world and that says it out loud. Who are those people? And then I think, I don't know, maybe you disagree with me here, Dean, but I think if you want to do it, you just got to start doing it. You've got to find a space, like an open mic, and a space where you can just start trying things out and playing, and just try to find a costume or a way of appearing that feels enjoyable, pleasurable for you, that's not you, that allows you to kind of express yourself in that bigger way, and then just create some little tiny bit of material and just go out there and start doing it and discover what happens when you're in relationship to the audience.
I think that's exactly right. It's, one way or another, that's the process. And the feeling from going from the living room to the stage, especially like right to an open mic, can feel long. It can feel like a really far distance, but I totally get, especially as a person with stage fright, that's so scary. But it really is. Like, I think you're exactly right, though. And if say going right to like an open mic situation feels like too big of a leap, you can find the other steps. And honestly, like just your family. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean your mom and dad, but your chosen family, your friends, your pets, but really being conscious of establishing a relationship with them, and then playing with the primordial ooze of satire. I wouldn't necessarily be like, hey, friend I'm talking to, watch me mock you. But you can get into a persuasive space, which ultimately is kind of where satire lives. Not necessarily that I'm trying to immediately persuade people to my opinion, but one way or another, if you want, the essence of satire is trying to get people to hear you say something that is either going to be uncomfortable to hear, or once they figure out what they're actually saying, they're going to experience it as a criticism, as a personal criticism or something. So finding a realm where you can start to play, and honestly, something that I would do is, there's lots of just real world things. Like, a thing that I've discovered, if you want to put yourself into a bouffon space where it's really high stakes, traditionally, you're under threat of potential murder. I mean, you'll get killed by the audience if they catch you. Go to the supermarket and just, when you're home, put a raw egg in your pocket. Put a raw egg in your pocket and be mindful that it's there. Otherwise, you'll pay consequences. And see how it shifts you to be loaded with an energy to be doing a mundane task, but to have to do it with more vigilance and a secret, because you're not going to tell anybody. You're not going to be like, hey, everybody, guess what? I got an egg in my... No, you do not want to get caught. And if you fuck up, you will get caught, because you'll have goo coming out of your pants. So there are like games to play and ways to exist. And ultimately, as a bouffon, what you're looking for is a relationship with an audience, a way to create a relationship with an audience that works consistently and is kind of an on-ramp into this realm where that you're really going to start messing with them. That's the tricky part. And you have to go through a lot of failure to do that. Is there a way to teach the audience how to watch you, a way to give you context quickly? It's true of stand-ups too. Stand-ups, the real thing that takes so long is to find that zone and get there quick, consistently.
That's great. Emily says that she's been caught with a raw egg in her pocket at work twice.
Nice, good. Wow, a whole work day would be fun. Although it would be a real meditation for sure to just keep reminding yourself that it's there. You could try other things though. I always think of like how samurai would have like a little trinket secretly somewhere in their armor that no one knows about. Like you gotta have your secret life, you know, as a person and a clown, but especially a Buffon. Buffon has a big secret life, which, you know, the secret really is that I actually know. You don't know that I know, but I know everything about you and the way that you behave and the things that you do. But if you knew I knew, you have all the social status and might be able to do this. But so I can't let you know that I know until I'm gone. But hopefully on the way home, you'll figure out that I knew the whole time, and you'll get so mad that you'll ramp your Tesla off the side of the bridge and I'll have won. That's the extreme version of it. But I try to think of Buffon and that level of stakes. I always say, like, you know, you work on performing and being present, you know, and then you kind of work on your aliveness of being present and ready to play. And, you know, that's sort of the cake. And then there's icing on the cake, present, ready to play, and I'm connected with why I go on stage and who it is that is me. But then Buffon keeps going, because then there's whipped cream and cherries and sprinkles, and it just, you know, I do this. I'm like, okay, here we are, troupe. If I'm directing a troupe, okay, we're here. Let's get here now, and just keep doing it. So the second that the audience sees you, you're already the best act in the show. So with my troops, I direct Buffon troops. Buffon troupe gave me this shirt, Il Fungo, which means the mushroom. But we would just work on getting charged up so that when the curtain peels back or whatever the lights come, whatever it is, you know, they're not just present. They're, you know, it's just like, wow. And then we let them sit in that and let them gaze at us, because obviously that can be a lot. But that to me is sort of where Buffon lives, is indulging in secrets.
Yeah, and you described that moment when you came on to do Honeybuns, and you know, you were half dressed and half made up, and in a way that's a similar sort of thing. It's like being caught in the middle of something.
Yeah.
And
I think too, like a big part of learning Buffon, like the technique, is learning how to charm the audience, learning how to get them to let their guard down, which I think should be said is very different from one to the other. You know, a lot of times you know, we see something that's working with someone and we think that's how you do it. But everybody's charming for different reasons. I'm using charming in a broad sense of like, what is the thing about us that can either get the audience to let their guard down or charm them? And it might be flirting, it might be impressing them, it might be getting them to, whatever it is. That's a big part of it. Like, come forward and charm us. And the way that we start in class is genuinely compliment someone, which I think is important, is before you get into the mocking, is to have an actual genuine good thing to say to this person, even if that's your audience that you're being critical of, which isn't always the case. But even if that's the case, it's like, come forward and find some reason to say something positive to them, and it works. And then once you're in there, you can start putting fake dog poop on the floor. You know, you can go crazy. But that, I think, is like an important lesson overall with communication, is that if you go in with your armor on and you shove a face in someone's mirror and go, look at what you're doing, you're a monster, they're not going to be available to receive that. But if you can meet them where they're at and if you can charm the pants off of them, you're going to have a more real conversation that ultimately is going to change them and you know. Yeah, so charming people from in an honest, authentic way is the tiniest little seed, and then you water that, and that's always a good place to start. And that a lot of times, even with bouffons I work with, I have to remind them of that, because they want to get to the really fun, outrageous play. I want to start poking, because audiences love that too. They love being playfully antagonistic and getting in trouble, and but you still have to come back to meeting them where they're at. Otherwise, you won't be able to go as far in that.
Yeah, I love that. And there's I love how you connect that to just communication skills in general. Like how can you be more persuasive in everyday communication by being charming, which basically what that means is being able to connect and acknowledge and see and really see and demonstrate that you're seeing the other person for who they are in a positive light, as well as then, because then that gives you permission to say other things.
Yeah, I have a troupe right now called 100% Kill. They're a bouffon troupe of 7 bouffons deep. And one of the games that we play that we do in a piece is just make observations about the audience without judgment. It just as a game. So it's not necessarily like, oh, nice shoes. And it's not also the opposite, like, wow, nice shoes. It's just like blue, or you point red hat, or what, you're just like observing things, and the audience is like, whoa, they see us, and it's a great place to start.
Yeah. I was gonna just circle back before we finish to, I think before we started the broadcast, you were talking about working with 500 Clown and being directed by Adrian, and I was curious just now when you were talking about what sort of state you need to be in to be able to go on as a clown. And I'm curious what Adrian did with you, because I remember 500 Clown shows, and they were always they were just like there, like right away.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what did he do with you to warm up to get into that state before you would go on?
Good questions. Two major things. One is, and especially I had come, my upbringing in Chicago, I was in the Neo-Futurists, and I love them. I am a Neo-Futurist. I love the writing, but it was real casual, make stuff quick. Okay, good. We'll figure it out day of show. 500 Clown was the opposite. We rehearsed. So their favorite show I ever did was 500 Clown Frankenstein, and I got to be in that show and do the role that was my dream role. It was big shoes to fill. No clown pun intended, but it was hard, but probably one of the more satisfying artistic experiences ever, largely because of Adrian was such a good clown director. But one thing was, in rehearsal, we had to go there. We had to go there to those places where there's over-the-top emotions. There's like just embodied emotional physical release. They go hard and heavy. It's clown theater, with all the drama of theater through clowning. And it was like, oh, okay, well, here's this, and I get the game. I go up to this character and I say, okay, I get the game. Getting the game wasn't enough. We had to practice and play through it organically and get to that like level 10 fear, anger, whatever, every time, so that you had an emotional workout. And it took a lot. You'd have to go to rehearsal ready to go there. But that's what it was, And then the other thing is a big warm up. And I mean, when 500 Clown, they were in such good shape. The rest of us were just trying to keep up. At that time in Chicago, we used to do a 90-minute PX, like PX 90. I'm talking about those like insane calisthenic workouts before rehearsal. And that's kind of what the warm-up was. Like, we would play a game called Ball, where we had a 4-square ball. And as you know, probably if you worked with them, they were big advocates for the game of 4-square, aggressive 4-square. But we would just play ball where there was no rules, but we had a ball and you had to play really hard, and it was running and throwing, and it was exhausting. You do it for 10 minutes and you're just like out, but we would just do it. We would get to a place of physical exhaustion before the show started. So the tendency is to be conservative with your energy. And there are some situations where you may want to do that. But if you can get to a place of fatigue, you don't have the physical ability to guard yourself emotionally. And so it's the classic acting trick. Oh, this monologue's not working. Do 20 push-ups, and then all of a sudden it's super real, because you lose the physical guarding because you don't have the energy. You have to prioritize. And then as we got in better shape, that warm-up had to keep going until the point where if you were really good shape, like which Adrian was, you'd have to run. It was just like, okay, run a 5K, come in, play ball. Because you know, it's like boxing. You got to go into round 1 covered in sweat. Otherwise, if you're cold, you're going to get knocked out. And that was the same situation. Get to a place of physical exhaustion, and then have done a lot of work on getting there regularly, so that when that show started, it was an event. It's hard to do that. You know, it's a challenge. I've you know, sought the feeling and the relief and how satisfying the experience was, but it's hard to do that on a regular basis without some kind of thing. You know, if like the Geffen Playhouse was like, you're going to do a show and it's going to be this, and you can sort of justify the emotional expense because you're making a living wage, or there's deadlines that are high stakes. To do it on a regular basis with people casually, it really takes like a commitment to what you're doing. But that's how we did it. And we did it, and I learned a lot from that process. And I definitely for the right project, that's kind of the way to go, is to go in as raw as possible.
Yeah, I mean, they were extraordinary.
Yeah, they were great. My favorite clown troupe. I love those shows. I mean, that was hit me at the right time. I just moved to Chicago.
Yeah,
we were Clown Macbeth and Frankenstein, and then Five Hundred Clown Christmas Carol, and I was just like, that's like exactly what I want to do. Yeah, it was beautiful work.
I never saw any of those shows because I arrived in Chicago a little bit too late, but I think it was probably their last show that they created together.
Elephant something or other.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was like
that was the one where they were like branching out, and it was very like high concept. It was very interesting. It's very different from their previous shows, but I remember that. I mean, I took all their classes. Again, clown nerd. I take everybody's classes. I've taken every idiot class 3 times. I took every 500 clown class they taught if I could afford it. Even when I couldn't afford it, I'm emailing clowns. I'm broke. Can I take this? Never hesitate to do that, by the way. You know,
yeah.
I always have some slots for that, and sometimes they don't get used. But I'll say, like, the things I got from asking. Sometimes I would just show up at mime school. I would just show up with a bag of ramen noodles, and I'd be like, "Can I please stay?"
Likewise with Clown Spirit Village. Like, if somebody comes to me and says, "Look, I really want to take this class and I can't afford it," I'm like, "Of course, you know, we'll make some deal." Like, I want it to be accessible and available to everyone, and I think most clown teachers want that as well. So it's just good advice, I think, Dean. You know, just if you want to take a workshop,
yeah, if you feel like lack of funds is prohibitive, you'd be surprised what you sneak into. Or just, I probably owe every clown money. I know for a fact I'm in the red with most of the teachers. You know, I'm like, how can I get, you know, that's just, there's spreadsheets out there with my name in
Hey, let's finish with this, and then we'll wrap up because we've been talking for a while. Dark Cloud McLightning says, have you seen James Acaster's Heckler's Wanted special? Makes me think about the rise of crowd work comedians. I don't know James Acaster's, but what about this question? Is crowd work what makes something clown?
Well, the simplest answer is, crowd work, especially nowadays, is referring to like stand-up-ish or person with a microphone interacting with a crowd, which in the context of the internet definitely skews into the realm of playfully antagonistic. But well, at its essence, yes, because clown, as we know, is having a direct relationship with your audience, and if that doesn't exist, then we're not quite clowning yet. So I don't know if I just consider that basic connection crowd work, but in a way it is. It's a clown is always interactive.
Yeah.
You're always deeply connected. And from where you go from there could depend. But if you went into the way, well, say like Chad Damiani, he come from the world of playing the heel from pro wrestling. So he's doing crowd work a lot of the time. A lot of LA clowns do that. They're in that realm of playful antagonism. And so most of the time, so it's definitely part of it, but at its basis, what makes clown is that connection.
It's a cool question. I think yes, but it's not how it's not how you might expect it to look always. Like crowd work for a clown can be very subtle and very nuanced and kind of delicate. It doesn't have to be sort of like adversarial
or just like absolutely poning an audience member. I think that is the thing. Those videos go viral.
Yeah,
because we do live in this realm of like, I can't wait to see someone on the other ideological side get freaking owned. And you see the hecklers do that, or sometimes vice versa. And it has a sensation to it that gets clicks. But nothing against that. God knows I've been in those situations. But you're right. I think your answer was more accurate. That what crowd work is, you can be very expansive to your definition of that, and it could be very subtle, very nuanced, for sure.
Yeah. Dean, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I feel like there's a whole lot more. We never talked about the masterclass. I'm super excited. Do you want to give us like a 30-second what's going to happen?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to teach it, but I've definitely been in this realm of teaching of trying to facilitate clowns feeling a push and pull from the audience. Always an attraction or repulsion, or a sort of, which has a kind of cosmic vibe to it. And because I am a bouffon, I am a satirist, I'm looking for that space where they're not like this, but I want them just a little on the edge of their seat. So working with that type of relationship with the audience, where you're really feeling the sort of ebb and flow, the attraction or the repulsion, and how to play with that little subtle level of tension. So that's sort of the vibe of what I've been into and what it's going to be about.
And why is that cosmic quest? Cosmic quest.
When I think about that, I always relate it to like particle physics, like ramming atoms together so that you catch these glimpses of how gravity works and energy. Or you could even think of it as like the Force from Star Wars. All the living things create this energy, this force that is everywhere and cannot be sort of directly wielded, but it is there. And it's like that. I don't have the secret to melt everybody's face off right away, but there is a kind of deep listening that creates an energy, a push and a pull. For me, it just feels like science. Obviously there's an art to it. There is a kind of spiritual-ish feeling component to it, but for me it feels cosmic. It feels like stars and planets and gravity and energy and sort of surrendering to that.
Beautiful. I love that. That's very intriguing and makes me want to take the workshop.
Hey, come on in. The more the merrier.
Yeah, well, I'll be there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
And that's going to be on August 9th. So it's coming right up. Well, I've taken up enough of your time, Dean. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful insights and experience with us. Really super appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm glad that you're doing this and talking to all these clowns. It's a great resource.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, Dean, I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.
See ya.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again for another Clown-versation. That was Dean Evans. I'm going to be taking a few weeks off, so we're not going to have a Clown-versation coming up soon, but we'll be back soon. And don't forget that coming up, we have Eric's workshop, Eric Davis, the Red Bastard, on July 5th. Little dip of the toe into the world of Buffon. And then we have Clown and the Cosmic Quest with Dean Evans, which he was just talking about, the push and the pull of that energy and those particles that are existing in the universe, and sort of how can we harness that in our clowning, in our relationship with the audience. So thank you for being here. I hope that you will join us again for Clown-versations next time. And in the meantime, check out www.clown-spirit.com. And of course, as always, keep clowning.